Hello everyone. Welcome back. So I'm back. I think this is gonna be another one of those Thoughts of Moss podcasts. I don't know why, but I think it's like kind of funny to call it a podcast. I don't know. I mean, it's just funny to me. And I mean, it's also kind of interesting because like most podcasts that I like are like an hour and a half long. And for some reason I feel like really, really weird filming for like an hour straight. You know what I mean? Like I'll film for 50 minutes and I'll be like, I mean, I got my point out. You know? Like there's not much else there is to say. But I guess that's just me talking about one topic. And yes, I can talk about one topic for 1 hour. For 50 minutes. So maybe that's, I don't know, maybe it's because other people are also talking about many different topics, and I usually just talk about one per video, kind of. I mean, it's like many topics that, I don't know, many topics in one topic, you know? Anyway. And that's just kind of how my life works. Everything is everything. When I say that everything is everything, I filmed a TikTok a while back about what that means to me when I say that. But ever since I was like little, I would recognize, like I feel like I would always see these weird parallels in my life. And maybe other people see this too. I'm sure a lot of people do too. But I just call it everything is everything. And pretty much what that essentially means is that like for me in my life, there's been so many times where one thing that I'm going through is represented in so many different ways. And like, it's just so interesting. Like when I was in toxic mold, I always talk about my toxic mold experience because it was such a huge part of my life and my growth to who I am today. And I just got out. I mean, I've only been out for a year out of, well, definitely more than a year, but like, I've only been out of like that level of stress for a year. But when I say everything is everything, it's because I mean, for example, I've talked so much about like how in stress my dog breeds have changed, like my favorites have. But a lot has changed. My style has changed in accordance with that. Just a whole bunch of different stuff. And it's so interesting how like maybe I'm sure some people out there probably relate to this. I don't know if this has to do with like, I don't know if this is like, I don't want to say it's synesthesia because it's definitely not, but like, I don't know if it's something like that causes this for people, but like in my life, it's like one thing is never just one thing. If I'm dealing with a problem, you best believe that it's going to show up in 15 different other areas of my life. Like when I moved out of toxic mold and I knew I was going to be moving to the city, just because this happened so often in my life, I already was like, I bet you anything that I'm gonna start liking Newfoundlands again. I bet you anything, because they had been so out of my, like, yes, I love Newfies. I love them. They've always been kind of a reoccurring breed for me. But they've always been kind of in the background for the last few years, because they represent something that I'm not even like matched with anymore, if that makes sense, even though I adore them so much. And when they were my favorite breed, my number one favorite breed, I loved things that were larger than life. Like, in all areas, I wanted my life to be larger than life. I picked careers that were larger than life. My aesthetic was larger than life. I also loved children. Like, I wanted, which I still do, obviously, but that doesn't really leave. But I wanted to be a mom so bad at that point in my life. Like, I really wanted to just be a mom and have many children. And I felt like I gravitated towards even nurturing, like, pastime jobs. Like, I loved the idea of all of that. And I was just very interested in learning about how motherhood is and raising children and all of that. And, you know, whatever. And then I was in toxic mold for 4 years, and that changed everything. Everything. I could no longer even begin to think about being a mom, because that was so, and I mean, I wasn't even in a relationship either, and it just, everything was so not what it was before. And so I changed as a person. I had to change as a person, and those things have carried with me even today. And then I started becoming very, very fascinated with the Yakutian Laika and the Akita Inu, the Japanese Akita Inu. And then my personality changed, and I started becoming more infatuated with resilience and self-sufficiency and homesteading and being more self-defensive, or not self-defensive, like, not like where I'm like defensive of people, but like where I'm protecting myself more. Because before, when I loved the Newfies, I was very much like, oh, okay, like very, very overly friendly, and I wanted to present myself as an overly friendly person, overly cuddly, overly sweet. And it's just so funny, because it's not like I'm intentionally doing these things, but this is the progression of life, how these things sort of mimic in all areas of life. And I don't know if that happens for everybody. I have an inkling that it does, and that some people maybe don't recognize it, but there are a lot of people like me who do recognize it. And so it's so funny how this time around, when I knew we were going to be moving to a bigger city again, because when I loved the Newfies, we were in a bigger city. When I loved the Akitas and the Yakutian Laikas, we lived in a much, much smaller city. And, much less glamorous. And, much more rugged place. And then, we lived in now we live in a bigger city again, and I just knew before we even moved here, I was like, I bet you I'm gonna start loving the Newfie again. I bet you they're gonna like come into my circulation of top favorite dogs again. They still have not kicked out the Japanese Akita Inu and the Yakutian Laika, but this is for all angles of life. This isn't even just a dog breed thing. This is for everything. And it's just so interesting how these things work. And even during that time where I was in toxic mold and I was infatuated with those more resilient dog breeds, those more those dog breeds that can go through anything, those, you know, were very resilient dog breeds. This is where my idea for Thoughts of Moss was born, because I also became very infatuated with moss, and I started learning about it and reading about it, and I read Gathering Moss, love that book, and learned so much about how moss even is resilient, yet small and simple. It lives small and simple, which is exactly what I had gone through, living small and simple, having nothing glamorous. Everything was actually stripped from me. It was very minimal and small living. But it protected me from the wind. It protected me from the hardship. It protected me from the harshness. And They're rugged, and moss is so much more resilient than we ever give it credit for. You know, we often look at it as this ground covering, and I could go on and on and on about moss because I love moss so much, obviously, because I'm always thinking about it. But there's just so much of this that has come about. Like, everything is everything. During this time of my life, like, all these different times of my life, different things mimic what I'm going through. And that's just always been the case for me. You know? And it's so funny because there would even be ailments that I've dealt with. I mean, this has happened to me countless times where I will be like, I can't even think of an example, but like, I'll say something like, I just really feel like I'm being held back from my dreams. Let's just say that. That's like a concept, maybe. I feel like I'm being held back from my dreams. I feel like I'm being, like, something's keeping me back. Something's holding me back. And then I will have, like, I can't even think of an ailment, but like, I'll have, like, a headache or something that's like centralized on a certain part of my head, and I would look up, what does a headache on this side of the head mean spiritually? And it would be, you feel like you're being held back in life. And some people out there might be like naysayers, and they kind of like, yeah, okay, they probably say a whole bunch of vague stuff. No, because then you'll look up, like, the next time it'll be a different problem that you're having in your life, and you'll look up that, and it'll be like that specific problem. And it's like, no, because if I would have looked up the headache thing today, it wouldn't apply. It would not apply, you know? That's just how it is. Everything is everything. And hey, I mean, maybe there's something to the fact that I don't know. A part of me was going to say, like, maybe there's something to the fact that I'm seeing this more, or I'm looking for it more, and that's why I see it more. But I don't think so, because, you know, it's not like as a kid I was thinking this way. I wasn't constantly, as a kid, just out the womb like, wow, everything is everything, I better start opening my eyes to it. But everything would be everything. And then I started realizing that. And it's now to the point, you know, where I was when I was little, I used to kind of doubt it a lot. Like, I'd be kind of like, yeah, is it though? Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a kind of a coincidence. It's kind of funny. And now I'm like, I'm full swing in it. I'm like, no, like, it literally is. And I can feel it coming on. I would love to know. I would love to meet more people like this, because I don't know that other people, I don't know anybody else like this. Maybe there are people. I'm sure there are, because I know that I rarely ever think like, wow, I'm like alone in this world completely. No, I mean, statistically, there's other people who think the same way that I do, and I would love to meet those people. I really would. What was I saying? Darn. Oh, but I would be able to feel it coming on, and I still do. I'm able to feel when there's going to be a shift in my life. Like, oh, I'm starting to feel like this is going to happen. I'm starting to feel a push towards this direction. I'm not supposed to be this way anymore. And I feel that a constant tug in one direction, or constant, or occasionally there will be a satisfaction. Like, no, this is how you're supposed to be at this point. Stay in this. And then a pulling. And then I start seeing signs that direct me towards that thing. And it's quite truly God's way of being like, yeah, keep going that way. Keep going that way. You know where I'm guiding you. And let me show you all the signs showing you that. I also think that everything is tied together mentally. Like, I truly think that spirituality aside, I think most spiritual things can be backed by science. I really do. In some way, shape, or form. And so when I think about things like that, I'm like, yeah, like, I'm sure there is some psychological reason as to why, let's say, when we lived in a bigger city, I was so infatuated with the Newfie. And, like, I'm sure there's like a scientific, psychological way or reason for those thoughts and the progression of them changing. Um, but it's also quite spiritual as well. You know, I think they both live together. Spirituality and science, I think they live beautifully together all the time. Um, yeah. So that's what I mean when I say everything is everything. Because it is. I think at the end of the day, like, most of our problems, we're able to see it. We're able to see that that's true to some degree. It's so also so interesting how back then, this just came to me. I just remembered this. Back then, I loved trees so much. So much. They were my favorite. Um, Back when I loved the Newfies, we lived in a big city or a bigger city. I shouldn't say big city. It was like a bigger town. And there was like a nightlife and all of this. And I loved big, grand things. I loved trees. I felt such a kinship with them. And I love trees now. They're beautiful. They're great. I don't feel like at this moment in my life that maybe I'm meant to learn from that right now. There's like that, I don't know. It's like this weird, not barrier over that, but I feel much more kinship to moss and lichen. You know, I do stop and I stop and look at everything. I stop and look at the trees when I'm on a hike. I stop and look at a rock. I stop and look at everything. I love nature. Um, but I almost all like I stop and look and acknowledge and am overjoyed by moss and lichen on the trees and on the forest floor and on things so much more. And that has not left me, you know? And maybe that's connected to the fact that still feel like I still feel so called to go back to rural living even more than I was before. I want to live, I mean, my goal, my dream, my goal, my everything is to live on a homestead in my favorite place in the world. And I don't know if I want to disclose that, but I love it, and I love it there, and I love the seclusion and the ruggedness and how quiet and serene it is, you know what I mean? Like, there's stunning, stunning beauty beyond what I can even comprehend. The energy is invigorating from the water. It's healing, truly healing. I've experienced it firsthand, how it heals in this magical place that I love. And that's home to me, and I feel that. I felt that even when I left this calling, that I meant to go back there. And it's just so interesting because I think, you know, a lot of people like grander things, and maybe one day I will get back to that as well. I don't know, because I am a person who is larger than life, truly. I've never been a small dreams and goals kind of a person. Even my small dreams and goals are bigger than some. But that's just in me. And that's not to shame somebody else's dreams and goals. It's just like, I just love goals and setting them and accomplishing them, and I love it. And seeing how far I can take my goals and how big I can dream. But it is kind of interesting because there was a point in time where I wanted to live in Alaska before I even knew this place existed. The place that I call home. And I do love Alaska. I think it's stunning. It's beautiful. Sometimes I look at videos of people living in Alaska and I'm like, wow, that, I can't even fathom that that's real. You know? But I don't know. At this point in my life, and there's a divine purpose for it, and I know there is. I know God has a divine purpose for why I feel this way, but I just feel such a calling to this small, rugged place that I call home. I'm not there yet, but I will get there. So, and maybe that's why I'm in love with lichen and moss right now still, because there's that tie there to rugged seclusion, rugged on a smaller level. Because obviously Alaska is very rugged. A lot of places in the US are bigger than life and rugged, you know. Some people, I'm sure Canada is very rugged, you know, even though I wouldn't want to live, I don't think I'd ever want to move out of America. I mean, America is, you know, whatever. I don't want to get into that, but I love America. And I would love to visit all those places, and maybe I'd fall in love with those places too. But the amount of home and kinship I feel with the place that I call home is unmatched. Unmatched. And it's so funny how this works. I had a neighbor who, because if you don't know, I live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan now, and I love it here. That place is my home, the place that I keep mentioning, but you know, as a whole, this place is my home. The Upper Peninsula is my home now. I'm from Lower Michigan, and it's so funny. My neighbor used to say, Lake Superior calls its people. And I believe that with all my soul, because my entire life, I've felt like I don't belong in Michigan. I don't belong here. I just felt this lost feeling, like I just want to move away. Even when I loved my life and I wasn't at school anymore, I was online schooled. And things seemed great in my life, I still was like, I felt a tug on my soul, on my spirit, that was like, there's something more. This like yearning, this dissatisfaction in life. And I never thought that would go away necessarily. I always kind of was like, well, maybe moving to a new place would be beneficial. And we had thought about so many different places. We had thought about Alaska a lot of times in our life. Growing up, we had discussed that. Because we're just nature girlies, nature lovers. And I do love the looks of Alaska. I mean, do not get me wrong. I must go there one day. I must. It's a must. And maybe I will find home there too one day, but it is funny because I felt that lostness for so long. For so long. And I kept trying to find ways, like maybe I can find life here in Lower Michigan. Maybe I can find in Lower Michigan. North is a big thing here, if y'all don't know. Everybody debates what's north. If you say Lower Michigan, people are going to be like, depending on where you are when you say Lower Michigan, people are going to give you a look like, okay, so you mean here. Like, they're going to assume that you mean lower and lower. Because Northern Michigan, that's a debate, honey. That is a debate. One moment. All right, I'm back. Yeah, Northern Michigan is kind of a debate here, if y'all don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. Like, I used to live in the northern part of Lower Michigan, and we would always say, we were up north. We're up north. And now that I'm in the Upper Peninsula, it's like, we're up north, okay? And the more north you go, the more true it is. You know. You just got an up close shot on my KP. That's great. My Keratosis pilaris and my bug bites. So love that for you. Anywho, but I used to feel that all the time, that lost feeling of like, where do I go? Maybe I can make it work here. Ruby, come here. Come on, honey. I used to always think like, well, maybe I can make it work here. Maybe I can find beauty here. Maybe I can find life here, because that's all I ever knew. That's all I ever knew to be home. And that's all I always kind of felt like that feeling is always going to be in me, I guess. You know, I guess maybe it's a different type of dissatisfaction that is masking as I need to move somewhere. But for me, that wasn't the case, because once I moved up here and I visited the place that I call home, it changed for me. I was like, this is home. This is home. This is where I'm supposed to live. And I love it. And I think that sometimes we can tell, if we really ask ourselves, what is this feeling really? Sometimes we can tell what that is. Sometimes we can tell that it really is what we're yearning for. This is gonna sound really wild for people who either don't like cats or I don't know, if you just think this is insane, because a lot of people would think this is insane. But throughout my life, I also felt, because I grew up having a dog, a Basset Hound, and a cat. And my cat was old, and he was getting older, and we could tell that he was like, I don't know if he will be here much longer. He just was getting so much slower and older, and I loved that cat so much. His name was O'Malley, and he was a big orange tuxedo cat, just like O'Malley from the Aristocats. And he kind of acted like him too, you know, big tomcat kind of guy, and he ruled the neighborhood. He ruled it. Like, every single cat was like, this is his block. We bow to him, you know what I mean? Um, and he was so loving and protective. Anyway, it's not about O'Malley, sorry. But he, wait. I don't know what she wants. I have to investigate in a little bit. But I would feel this weird, like, yearning for more. Come here. You want to cuddle? Come on. Let's cuddle. Come. Wait. I think she wants to go for a you-know-what, but it's a little warm out, so I have to wait till later. Anywho. Come here. Come. Nah. Alright. 1 minute. Anyway. So I felt this, like, weird yearning. Like, I feel like I need a companion in my life, and I just felt like, no, we're meant to have more animals in our life. I really felt that way. And obviously when you're obviously my mom was just, you know, like most parents, they're like, okay, like, we're not having another pet, like, stop. Like, I got my own thing going on, I've got to go to work. But, you know, there was a long time where she was like, no. Even to fostering, even to any of that, it was like, no, whatever. And, you know, that's, you know, her journey, her whatever. But I just felt like, man, I really feel like we're supposed to do something. We're supposed to have more animals in our life and be more involved in animals. And I'm also a firm believer that even, like, if you think that one route isn't going to work for you, like, for example, if you're like, pets are too expensive, animals are too expensive, there's always going to be another route. Maybe try fostering, maybe try something where that thing that you think isn't going to work out can work out for you. If you felt like you're meant to do something, you really feel like you're meant and called to do something, it can work out in some way or another. And I do feel like my mom feels that way more now. Back then, I don't think she really thought that way at all. It's okay, you know, her life is her life and her journey is her journey. But that being said, I really felt that way. And then there was one day where we went into school, and one of my sister's teachers had started fostering kittens, and they said that they have they need help, they need more fosters. And we told our mom, and it seemed easy enough for her. And I think with that, there was like a, you know, part in our life where she was like, okay, you know, I do feel ready for that. I do. And I think it just aligned perfectly how it was, because she felt a lot more open to the idea. And she, as we started realizing, oh, we have the room for it, we have the capabilities for it. And it didn't take long. Our cat, O'Malley, shortly passed away. And I mean, he was old, very old cat. He was old when we bought him, or when we had him, but sweetest cat. And but yeah, and we started fostering, and that, I felt like, wow, I feel like I'm getting closer to this. I feel like there's still something about this that feels off, but I feel close. And this next part is going to sound insane, but we had the room, we had everything, we had a pretty big house. And as we began fostering, we started also adopting some cats. And I was so blessed. We were so blessed to be able to do this. But after many fosters, we had so many fosters, and after a while, some of the cats would choose each other. And we ended up having 6 cats that we owned ourselves. And that sounds like an insane number to some people. That sounds insane. But, and it also, I don't want this to make it sound like, and I begged my mom, and so she complied, and so we ended up with, like, because it wasn't that way. It just so happened to be the perfect time in our life where that was okay, where that was perfect, where that made sense. And we did. We had 6 cats, and I felt so, there was something about it that I felt so satisfied. Like, it felt like, yes, this is what was meant to happen all along. Like, then everything, every yearning for something was gone. I felt no yearning for like more fullness in our family at all, and it was just so beautiful. And every single one of them had their like such strong personalities, and they were just so beautiful, and their relationship together felt so balanced. There was such a balancedness about our household, and I loved that. I loved it so much. And I could go into detail about every single one of our cats and how their personality was. I really could. And I don't know if I should. But it felt so balanced. And it felt so peaceful. And I mean, I think I just say all of that just to say, like, sometimes our inklings in our hearts and our spirits are something, because it felt so right. It felt like that was what I was waiting for, was each and every one of them, and each and every one of them had such a distinct personality, and it matched our household so well, and it felt like family. It felt like family. And I loved it. We all loved it. It was just so wonderful and beautiful, and I feel so blessed that we were able to do that. That we were able to have that life for so long, and it was wonderful. And I think, yeah, whenever we feel these like spiritual yearnings in our heart, sometimes they can be masked as something else. Sometimes, you know, sometimes when you feel an emptiness in your heart, it's like, well, have you spent time with God lately? Have you, is this to mask something else? But sometimes it means something. Sometimes it means that there's meant to be something in your life, and you're being pulled towards that thing in some way or another. And yeah, and it was just such a blessing that we were able to do that. And I just feel so blessed that we were able to foster all those cats, and even that felt so fulfilling. And so, like, yes, we are meant to be doing this right now. And it all aligned so perfectly. It really did. So, and I mean, that's not to say that I am, every single time I feel a yearning that I know what that means. Because I so often don't, and I have to like overanalyze it, and sometimes I still don't know, and sometimes that just means that we're not meant to know right now. I mean, right? Sometimes these things reveal themselves to us in time. Especially since I don't think I even would have allowed myself to be like, oh, 6 cats. Like, I don't even think, even if even if God himself, well, maybe if God himself came down and was like, you are supposed to have these 6 cats for some reason. I mean, maybe that would be the only way I'd be like, okay. Because even though I wanted a pet, I was thinking like, I don't know, one, maybe a dog. Like I wasn't thinking like that. And, but it was meant to happen that way. It was meant to happen that way. I think so much in life is like that. And we just take these steps towards it and see where that leads us. Everything is everything. So sometimes the signs are there. Sometimes the signs are all around us. And if we analyze them, sometimes we get the answers we need. One of my favorite quotes is by Carl Jung. And I don't back behind everything Carl Jung's about, whatever. But I do love this quote so much. And it's, oh, if I can get the words exactly right, that would be great, but I doubt it. Something like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And I'm like, oh, like when I first heard that, I was like, yes, that is exactly how I feel about life. Like, so much of the time I feel like everybody, and when I say we here, I do mean myself included, because sometimes I say we and I mean a collective of society, but I do mean myself too. Sometimes I feel like, as people in this life, we tend to avoid our thoughts, or we don't look into further things because we're kind of afraid of what they mean, or sometimes we just aren't even used to delving into our own thoughts and our own feelings and our own spiritual like pulls. And because of that, because we don't make the unconscious conscious, they direct our life and we call it fate, and we just say that's just how it was meant to be, I guess. And yeah, I guess I ended up here and that's just how it meant to be. And it's like, no, like if we start thinking about these things, if we get our wheels turning a little bit, like that won't happen. These things won't direct our lives. We will see the pattern, or sometimes they will direct our lives, but it will be a conscious knowing that that's how it's meant to be happening. Anyway, have a wonderful day, you guys. I think that's all I have to say today. I think I got that quote right. Anyway, have a wonderful day. Everything is everything. Goodbye.